First, I'll open the public hearing on the amendment to the comprehensive development ordinance.
Mr. Chairman, before we read the language, I want to make clear that this is, we passed out copies of the warrant. All the 4 articles that we voted on November 8th, there's a, referendum questions. The polls up comes tomorrow, November 8th. Tuesday will be open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. You can vote by absentee ballot. All these articles have been posted and advertised in the newspaper, in the journal as well. The Article 2 on the warrant and the first public hearing reads, shall the town vote to amend section 2.2.2.11 of the town Monmouth Comprehensive Development Ordinance by deleting the phrase 30 days, replacing that language with 90 days, for the purpose of changing the time period for recording the subdivision plan from 30 days to 90 days, so that the amended ordinance will provide any subdivision plan not recorded in the Quebec County Register of Deeds within 90 days of this date, the plan is approved and signed by the board shall become null and void. All dedications of easement, development rights, or other legal documents as required to be recorded must be recorded prior to the conveyance, leasing, or occupation of any lot.
Any questions or comments? Okay, since there is none, I'll close that public hearing and open the second public hearing on the amendment to the shoreline zoning ordinance.
Which is, Mr. Chairman, Article 3, it reads, shall the town vote to amend the shoreline zoning ordinance, section 12, subsection C, relating to non-conforming structures, to add a new subsection 5 pertaining to setbacks from private roads and shoreline zones with the following language. 5. Setback from private roads and shoreline zone. In order to protect the water body by ensuring that water body, wetland, and tributary stream setback is met to the greatest practical extent, the planning board is approving an expansion, reconstruction, or relocation where lot size, topography, or other issues on the lot limit construction options may reduce the setback for primary and accessory structures from the private way to A, 25 feet to the edge of the right-of-way property line, B, 40 feet from the center line of the right-of-way, or C, in situations where either A or B does not provide that water body, wetland, or tributary stream setback is met to the greatest practical extent, and where pre-existing and properly permitted buildings and adjacent lots do not meet the setback, a distance equal to the line of the setbacks of the 2 adjacent buildings.
Were any, yes?
We have 2 ordinances in town. Shoreline is a zoning ordinance. We have a comprehensive development ordinance also. Shoreline zoning is supposed to be very strict application to protect the lakes and streams and such. You're reducing setbacks in shoreline, but in the rest of the town, you're forcing them to meet the 50 foot, some places 70 foot. If you're going to, I'm not against, by the way, reducing shoreline, because it will cut down a lot of appeals, particularly from the road. However, one of the reasons that we spent months and months and months and a lot of money on redoing the comp plan, redoing the ordinances, was for some continuity and uniformity throughout the town. So the language should be inserted in the Comprehensive Development Ordinance 2009, section 3.1.2.21 or something like that, 2.3.2.1.1 or something, so that in the rest of the town, on the private roads, they would only require a 25-foot setback also. It just isn't fair to somebody on a private road down off the Warren Road somewhere to have to meet a 50-foot setback, when somebody down in what's a critical area, the shoreline, only has to meet a 25-foot setback. So, sometimes I think we jump too quick without really thinking that the reason for hearings is to make amendments and additions and changes before it goes to vote. And I really think that in this section in the comprehensive development ordinance, that we should insert a section in there allowing the 25-foot setback on private roads also.
It can't be
No,
done.
that's very different.
This is a public hearing, it can't be done at this point.
What?
This can't be amended, this is the warrant has been, it'll be voted on, it certainly can be considered later, but this is not that kind of public hearing.
Well, you should have had public hearing first for amendments. You know, I don't know the way we do things here in town, we don't think things out. You should have had a public hearing first where people could suggest amendments, make comments, and make changes, and then produce a final warrant.
Well, we did, actually. We had a meeting and we discussed all these ordinances.
It wasn't a hearing.
It wasn't a hearing,
Advertised here.
but it was the time when, you know, this could be changed and so on. But I think what you're proposing should probably be proposed for our next election.
Well, somebody ought to direct the planning board to hear.
That will be addressed. We should make sure that, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, we should make sure that that concerns, that Dave Shaw documents that, so that when we start convening the CPIC to discuss the grammar changes and whatnot we need to make in that ordinance to dress up amendments and whatnot, that we would like to get on the ballot for next
You're
year.
going to start
We
with
can-
those here that I've been appointed by the Board of Appeals to be their representative at those meetings. I am not notified, I mean,
We haven't started them yet.
started them yet.
Right?
I was going to agree with that as opposed to beat him up. But I think what I was going to point out, Tim already has pointed out, when we start reviewing the ordinances, at that point in time, we can deal with it. Because I think we missed the boat, basically, when we did the ordinance, in not having difference between public roads and private roads. The reason for this here, we asked for this to take place, is so we could make it a lot easier now, and get it over with the shoreline zone area, because that's given us a real headache the past few years. I think we will be dealing with it properly as at this point. Thank you.
Dave?
I agree, and I think we should deal with this in the other ordinance, and I do have it already down on the docket to bring up. But the reason, just so everybody gets clear, the reason it's in the shoreline zone only right now is because the shoreline only zone requires a 100-foot setback from the water, whereas in general development, we do not have any rear lot size except for a 20-foot setback. It is so dramatically in place for a 100-foot rear lot line now that it makes this amendment make more sense. That doesn't fit within the rest of the community. For it, that's the reason why it's only shoreline. Because the rest of the community doesn't have a 100-foot rear line set like this ordinance.
We don't always agree. But I reserve my right to disagree.
Any other comments? Then I'll close the public hearing on that amendment. And the next public hearing is on acceptance of a $400,000 grant for renovation of the Helen Melody Drain Hall.
Chairman, Article 4 reads, shall the town of Monmouth vote to accept Communities for Maine's future program grant funds in the amount of $400,000 for the purposes of partnering with the Theater at Monmouth, a nonprofit organization, to complete renovations and full accessibility upgrades to the former Monmouth Grange Hall at no cost to the town of Monmouth, and to make such assurances, assume such responsibilities, and exercise such authority as are necessary and reasonable to implement such programs. Furthermore, the town of Monmouth is cognizant of the requirement that should the intended national objective of the Community Development Block Grant Program not be met, all CDGB funds must be repaid to the state of Maine CDGB program.
Are there any questions or comments?
I have a question. Mostly clarification, $400,000, and then did I read something in the KJ about another $450,000 coming into this also?
There was a previous grant of $450,000.
So the building's gonna be $850,000,
That's about how much money we'll have in it, yeah.
and if we don't meet the requirements, the town owes the $850,000?
The only way not to meet the requirements, as I understand it, is not to spend money on what the objectives of the grant were. We've got a couple of gentlemen here who can probably explain that a little better.
Yeah, we've really met the benefit of the program already up front because you have to meet the national objective at the time of the application. And by doing a blighted structure, you automatically meet that, so there will be no payback. I would also like to say that the first money was federal money, the second money is the state bond money, which deals with this warrant article. I'd like to point out a couple other things too. The project is going quite nicely now. And as far as the first $450,000 that the town voters were good enough to pass for partnering with Theater Monmouth, we had a review, was it Monday or Tuesday? Yesterday. And the staff from the State Department came out here, met with Curtis and Mary Mead and David, myself, and they reviewed not only the Grange project, but also the Tech project, which is putting in the new biomass facility. We were lucky enough to get a tour of that as well. And from what I gathered from the review, everything is going really well. So the money is being properly spent to date. And I think David would agree, and I'm sure Curtis, that they were very enthusiastic of how things are going, and the bookkeeping, which is minimal for the town. Also like to point out that we have reserved $750 in case there is any audit cost. I think the first audit doesn't have any what's called single audit requirements for so much federal funds being spent in a fiscal year. So I don't see this impacting the town at all to one penny. So with that, I'll shut up. Maybe David, you have something you want to add? Or?
Doug, could you have people say what they are so I can get it right? Sorry.
Oh, Barrett, B-A-R-A-N, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine, I just...
I'm Ron Clement. I had, I guess, a follow-up question. When all's said and done, what are we doing in the building?
David, you want? Go ahead, you're on.
Yeah. I'm Linda Wilcox, and I live at Wilson Pond Road in North Monmouth, and I'm president of the board of the theater. And as this project has grown, the exciting thing for us at the theater is that it has involved more, and there's a greater and greater potential for community use and involvement in the building. So this certainly the theater is going to be able to benefit from it because we own the building and because that's where we feed our actors and company members during summers, and there's rehearsal space as well. But the building really has not been functional in any other way. It wasn't insulated, couldn't have been used in the winter time. If anybody who had been in the building before the renovation started would see it was in pretty dire straits. Did you say blighted? Yes. I think that really describes the building well. But it also has some features to it, I think, that's going to make it very exciting for the town. The second floor is a wonderful open space. It has a small theater, a small stage at one end, and it would allow itself for community meetings. As it would downstairs, it's going to be a fully functioning kitchen. The money that's in the second round will go to construction of an elevator, so it will be completely handicapped accessible to the second floor. And so, no, there can be parties there. There can be, we have so many groups in Monmouth that are doing wonderful things for the community, and they really do need space. The other thing that's happened, that's very, of course, is very heartening too, is that this is space that will be used as an emergency shelter, and we're doing that in conjunction with And it will be the only emergency shelter between Augusta and Lewiston. And I think we've all seen, given the weather conditions we've had of late, how devastating a very serious storm can be. So being able to use it in that way will be a benefit as well.
So is the town, I saw something about perhaps renting it out for a fee or such, something of that.
I think I can speak to that. That would be a fee that would cover the maintenance, the use of the building, that if a group was going to use the building, that there would be a small fee to cover heat, electricity, et cetera, but it would be really very small. But as my understanding, the grants don't cover the cost of maintaining the building once it's been renovated.
Right, I guess that's what I'm getting at. Tungsten Hall right now costs us quite a little pretty penny that last time I asked, nobody gave me the answer, and perhaps I can hear tonight, on what sort of money we're getting from the theater at Monmouth to help pay for the cost of them using that all year. I asked the question last time I was here, and it was pertained to a few years back when I asked the question, and they said something to the effect of the theater group was being charged $1,200 a year, but nobody could remember when they collected that money last time. So I asked this a few months ago here, and they said they were going to look into it and get back to me. Perhaps somebody from the board remembers me asking that, and perhaps somebody has those figures, and feel free. Go ahead. I
could answer it.
Great.
As a trustee, the theater is going to pay $5,500 for the next year to use the theater. And we base what we charge them on what it costs the townspeople, the taxpayers, for energy. That is all the electricity that they use, all the heating fuel that they use, and as well as an increase in the water. There's be no increase in the sewer use. Those things are what we're asking them to pay as part of their rent for the use of the theater.
So all they're paying is $5,500 a year. And what, are they going to pay anything towards this new building?
They own it.
We own that.
Right, so the theater is paying all the maintenance on that building. The town will never have to pay any maintenance on that building?
No, it's not our.
Or upkeep, or it's not? Now, as far as the last time again that I saw the electricity bill, just the electricity bill comes from like $12,000 a year. And we're only getting $5,500 from the theater group?
Well, I've been told that the amount of electricity they use for the air conditioning and lighting and their use of the annex all year long, the $5,500 covers all the electricity they use as well as all the heating oil. I don't know other than what I've been told.
Curtis, we don't have a heat line in the library, do we?
No, so that's separate.
That's what I thought. That electricity also covers use of the library.
Okay.
If I may, I'm Dave Graham, work for the Theater of Monmouth, but also am a member of the Friends of Cumston Hall, which is a fundraising group for Cumston Hall. And the Theater of Monmouth is actually only one user of Cumston Hall. There are many. The Monmouth Community Players, the schools, the library, of course, and several groups and clubs and organizations. The building is used throughout the year. The Theater of Monmouth actually uses it relatively few months of the year compared to some of the other groups. However, I wanted to point out that the Theater at Monmouth also has put in the last decade about $100,000 worth of improvements into Cumston Hall, including the new seats and a lot of work in the theater itself. The Theater at Monmouth actually owns the lights and the sound equipment, which is upgraded and also is used at no charge by everybody who uses Cumston Hall. So I think that the Theater at Monmouth is a good partner and neighbor in the community, And I hope that you'll think that the renovation of the Grange Hall, which again is only used by the Theater of Monmouth for 12 weeks a year, approximately, will be, the Grange Hall will have an opportunity to be used by the community for all kinds of events. And the good part about these grants is that there'll be no mortgage, there'll be no traditional costs that would increase the amount of cost. For example, the cost of renting the Winter Performing Arts Center is the amount it is primarily because of the debt service on that building. This building will not have that, and so the cost can be kept low for community groups. That's certainly what everybody's interested in. So, thanks.
Why don't you give me the list of all those improvements if you want? If you give me your email address, I'll.
Sure, it's Clement@fairpoint.net. But the reason it concerns me is since I moved into town, it seems like the theater costs us more and more money. They got a what was it? Not, I don't know, but whatever it is. It was a bond for like $1.2 million right around the late 90s or something rather, which I'm assuming we're still paying on. I'm all for it. The building's great. I go to the theater that plays there, the kids theater, I put money in the jar, and that's all fine. But the reason I do that is because I think it all should be privatized. I don't think it should be on the taxpayers of the town to have to pay for that building. And so as such, I'm concerned that, something else may turn into another thing that the taxpayers are going to end up paying, which in roundabout way we are. It's a grant from the feds, a grant from the state, but we are the feds in the state. So, I mean, you're talking about almost another $1 million here. I mean, between two buildings, you're at $2 million. That's a lot of money. And I'm concerned, again, with how much these things cost. And why aren't we, again, I personally don't think $5,500 is enough money. What do they gross in that place every year for the theater group? Again, way back when I brought this up years ago, they said the director of something or other, the theater group said they were grossing, granted that's gross, something in the neighborhood of $400,000 in ticket sales and things of that. And they were telling us, well, I'll take your figure, and they're paying $5,500. I don't think it's enough. But I'm sure everyone's probably sick of listening to me talk already, so I'll get off the subject, but I wanted to express my concern that these things cost a lot of money.
One thing I'd like to add, though, if you don't mind, the $1.2 million bond, if it's the one I'm thinking of that you're referring to, that actually built the library addition on the Thompson Hall. That had nothing to do with the theater. That could be, there might be something else that we improved in another part of the building, but as I recall, primarily that was to build that addition on that. And I think they had updated the air handling systems too at the same time.
Yeah. We also got, Mike Barron, we also got some grants at that point in time, I think about $350,000 that helped with the elevator construction to make the accessibility modifications that had no cost to the taxpayers as well.
Yeah, Steve Kalenda. I think I've come and I spoke up in opposition to the renovation of the Grange Hall, but just to go on record, I'd like to say that I believe it's the worst waste of taxpayer money that I've seen in the history of Monmouth. It's good to come to these meetings where you get to learn a little bit more each meeting. I thought we were just taking it all from the federal government, but now we've taken $450,000 wasted of federal tax dollars, and now we're going to waste $400,000 of state tax dollars. And it's not really the Fed, it's not really the state. You get it, if those who go out and work, you get a paycheck, you'll see they take out federal tax and state tax. And it's going to this building, which I believe is just a waste of money. It's an old, dumpy old building that is going to benefit very few. And if you look at all the needs, what do we listen to every night on the news? We see all the needs of federal, state government. They're running out of money. They don't have money for schools. People are out of work. They don't have money for that. So we're going to borrow money from the feds. They're borrowing it from China now. We're bringing it here and spending on the building. I don't know where the state maintenance is getting their money. There's no one's working, so the few people that are have to support it. I guess just want to understand, I believe it's a total waste of money. But we have something we can do about this. We can vote no on this, which most people in town, they say, oh, it's free money, let's just vote this. But maybe if we voted this down, it might ring a bell, and someone in Washington might say, oh my God, they actually said no to this money. And maybe, we wouldn't send it back, and hopefully they wouldn't waste it somewhere else, but most people probably realize that's what will happen, so they'll vote for it here. But I'm going to vote no on it. I hope others in town vote no, and send a message. The message would be more important than wasting this money here. I mean, there's so many more important things that our tax dollars should be going for than fixing up the dumpy old Grange building here in Monmouth. That will offer so little benefit to so few, but that's the way it seems like our tax dollars are going. And I'm going to encourage everyone in town to vote no. Send a message. Maybe a bell will go off in Washington somewhere, and someone will think about it. But it's probably only a dream, because most people will probably vote for this thing.
Yes, Paul.
I gotta say one thing, and when we had the 98 ice storm, my sister-in-law was living in the schoolhouse apartments, and they were shut down. There was no place for those people to go except to Winthrop, because we didn't have any facility in town that could handle even one person, much less 40 or 50. And they were over there for 16 days at least. And we were struggling because we didn't have any facility here in Monmouth. So one of the things that's being done with this Grange Hall, aside from updating it, is it's being made a place where if we have something similar, it can be used in Monmouth. We don't have to send our people all over hell 7 acres so they can get a place to stay. And it does have facilities for taking a shower and things like that. The Winthrop, it had no facilities at all. You just went there and you sat all day on a cot, and you got the food when you got it, and there was no way to do anything but just sit there, and it was not pleasant in any way. So that, to me alone, that protection is worth something to the town of Monmouth. And certainly, this is not the time to say we don't want it.
I think it's a lot of money. I hear a lot of grumbling in town and such, so I think it's very important on you folks at the theater to bend over backwards on outreach. Approach the senior citizens and see if they want it, if you can make arrangements for them to use it. And we've had a couple of fundraisers and things for people with serious health issues and such, and some of the locales that they were in were very tough locales and not too conducive to that and such, so you folks have a lot of to do. If I were going to spend $1 million, and I think it's going to be $1 million, I'm standing still don't have a kitchen yet. Is that true? You don't have the money for the kitchen?
Well, we're trying to make it work with this.
I know you are. I know you are. By the way,
I wish it was a lot cheaper too.
I think that fire escape's the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life.
I agree.
So you have a lot of public relations to do. I don't go to theater, my family does. My family, every member of them took part in the theater at one time or other. I enjoy the theater being in Monmouth just for the fresh crop of interesting new people you meet. There sure ain't much downtown Monmouth unless we get a new fresh crop every year of people, and I made a lot of friends and had a lot of interesting conversations and such. But I guess my point is you do have a lot of PR to do. And you have a lot of community outreach to do, and you need to bend over backwards to make sure it is usable by the community. Because we've had a history with somebody taking over our schools and not being very nice to our citizens and community and such. So please don't treat us like they did.
Thanks, Ed.
And of course, we're hoping it's really a stimulus to bring other people in town who will do something about our downtown. And, any other comments or questions? I'll close that public hearing and open the next one on the amendment to the ordinance for the recall of elected officials.
Mr. Chairman, Article 5 reads, shall the town vote to amend the ordinance for recall of elected municipal officials by deleting section 6B in its entirety, replacing it with D. An affirmative vote for removal shall require, one, a simple majority of votes cast, and two, that at least 10% of the registered voters of the town of Monmouth have voted on the vote for removal.
Other questions or comments, Sharon?
One of my questions is in Article 2, it says, by deleting the phrase, and it tells you what phrase they're deleting. But in Article 7, it just says by deleting section 6B, it doesn't tell anybody what is really being deleted. So I was wondering why those two articles were so different written. Usually you put what you were deleting in and you put lines through it, so people know what they're dealing with.
It was written by the town attorney, anyway, and I think what's, only thing that deleted was, if you remember, it was a 2/3 requirement for removal. That's essentially the only substance.
Right, people don't know that.
Yeah, I can't help it.
And in Article 2, they specifically said,
It's,
it looks a little
I
one-sided.
can't change it,
what was
right.
written,
I understand.
like trying to hide something.
I don't think that's intended, I understand.
Somebody else?
Yeah, why did you decide to do this?
It was a petition.
That it was not a legal petition.
I know.
No, you should not have acted on it. People should do things honestly, straightforward, and legal. You get a couple of free malcontents that go down to the dump and spread rumors and tell half-truths and things, and people don't want to say no to them, and you do things like this. At a town meeting, for example, you can't override the moderator vote 2/3. Affirmative vote to override the moderator. How much does it take to throw a governor out, or a legislator out, and such? You should leave it alone. Every 3 years, you have a recall. You have a recall every 3 years. It's called an election. This, you know, I'm really sad, disappointed at the board that you would act on an illegal petition.
Well, this, it raises the standard, makes it more difficult to recall an official.
No, it doesn't. It was very easy to recall.
Well, the previous petition, the previous,
The
existing, section 6 was just it was 2/3 of the votes cast. So there could be maybe 100 people, 66 vote to get rid of the elected official. In this case, we're requiring to at least be at 330 people.
It still should be 2/3.
Take part. So
Should be a minimum amount of vote and 2/3. That's all recall petitions, not all recall ordinances I've ever seen require a minimum amount of vote and 2/3. Because every 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, 4 years, you have an automatic recall. It's called an election.
The town manager gathered a number of the ordinances for recall officials from other towns, and I think most of them were simple majority.
Ours was the only one 2/3, everyone else was majority, 15.
And there should be a reason why we recall people. Not just because a couple of people go to the dump and, you know, the backyard politics. There should be a reason.
Well, the ordinance requires in another place that the reason be stated in that petition for the recall. Like, it has to be a good reason. Somebody's probably not going to sign a petition if you're just recalling somebody for.
If you've got someone badgering you at the dump, you'll sign anything to get rid of them.
I think that we should make a dump, a petition-free zone so you can get down there and conduct business without them around. I'm tired of, there's some transient down there last weekend collecting petitions for some third political party, and he admitted he was being paid a per diem plus so much a petition, so much a signature that he didn't even know what the political party was. if people were signing the damn thing to get rid of it, because he wouldn't leave below. You need a shower, a bath, a shave, and a few other things besides. So I think we ought to pass an ordinance and no collection of petitions. You know.
Well, there's actually a state law that regulates how people may conduct petitions at public places. They can't approach people, they can't pester people, they can't try to force people to do things. And if that occurs, the people at the transfer station should call the local constabulary and it should be taken care of.
It's not to transfer people though to monitor that. They have their own jobs to do it.
They get complaints, they had several complaints about several different individuals who were trying to put petitions forth in the last several months.
Right.
Going back to Sharon's concern, I assume that the attorney got paid to do this work, that
Yes.
leaves a little to be desired. Is there some way that the town can get that information out, like in the time frame that's left? Because it's right, I mean, she has a valid
We can
point.
certainly put out an advisory description of the article, sure, but, as I said, the only thing that of substance was that in the article that was removed, as it says, was the two-thirds requirement. That certainly could be put out, I don't mind doing that.
I think it'd be worthwhile.
Every change in ordinance I've ever seen has the original ordinance with the dotted lines of what you're striking out and the additions in where they go. So people can understand what's being changed.
Sure.
Yeah.
As far as the reason, Ray brought up what kind of reason should be in this, and it was voted down. And literally, you almost said that anyone could be voted out for any reason at all, other than the color of their hair. Am I
Everybody
correct?
can know the color of your hair.
People will sign a petition. It's meant, it's meant to get somebody, rid of somebody because you don't like the color of the hair.
But the petition